Hello, so not even 3 days after selling the BMW 320ci, this sort of fell into my lap. Now, it was actually supposed to be going to the scrapyard as a non-runner. It had been running and stalled and then wouldn't restart. So I went to go see it and managed to bump start it, which proved that the car would run. So I thought it was worth taking the car and doing a few videos at the very least, and then getting rid, even just scrapping it. But the car itself has actually been serviced at my friend's garage for the last 14 years. Look at all this. Years and years. That's what you want to see with a car. So, after having a brief look at the car, we realised that the starter motor was seized, and I soon thought, well, maybe this car is worth saving. So it's a 2000 1.6 Mark 4 Golf with 169,000 miles on it, which is high, but considering where it's been looked after, I'm pretty confident that it could last a few more years yet. So of course, first of all, we had to figure out why it wouldn't start and change the starter motor. So this is the starter, which, as you can see, car's been under the sea. This was quite difficult to remove. These bolts were tight all the way out, and the upper one was even worse. Very difficult to access the top one with an extension, but we managed to get it in the end. Even once we did get the bolts out, the starter motor was still sea solid in the case, but of course we got it off. Then the exhaust was blowing, which quite loud, so obviously it was going to fail in MOT. So as you'll see here, the centre pipe connection, which is common on all the VWs to be honest, had rusted completely through. So the exhaust was actually okay, it just required the sleeve in the centre. So back underneath the car, this is the new starter fitted. Managed to get that in, all sorted. This is the state of the underneath of the car, but this is the only issue that we really have, this sleeve with a hole in. The rest of the exhaust doesn't look great, but none of it's blowing, just the connection. So this is the new sleeve and clamps. Of course, it wasn't just a case of removing the nuts. The exhaust fought back a little bit, but we got there in the end, and this is the new clamp. The interior was obviously really mouldy. I think the car had been off-road for the last 2 years. So here it is before. and here it is now. I mean, I didn't give it too much effort, but I just made an effort to obviously get rid of the mould, because it's just unsafe to be in a car that's got spores everywhere. So it's not too bad. Doesn't smell great, but it's good enough, and at least it's got a sunroof we can leave open. And look at this, it's even got a working sunroof. And I love this control as well. Makes more sense than the buttons. You just wind it to where you want it. There was the engine management light on and the airbag light. Fortunately, after fitting a new battery, which I had lying around, a spare used battery, but one that I could fit to the car, I checked the error codes and managed to erase the engine management light and the airbag light, and they didn't come back, so I was quite lucky. This meant that I was able to present the car for an MOT. As you can hear, that's a very quiet running car. Not what you'd expect for 169,000 miles. So I submitted the car for the MOT, and yeah, there were a few minors which completely expected, but the rear caliper, the near side rear caliper, was binding quite badly and took a bit of effort to release, but fortunately I didn't have to replace the caliper. So this is the amount of bind that we had. The wheel wouldn't move very easily at all. So wheel off to investigate, remove the caliper, check these slides, the slides were fine, so I had to get the caliper off. And it turned out this outer pad was seized solid in the carrier, which initially looked like it would be the issue. Look how new the pads were prior to the car being stood still. So we pried the pad out, and looking at the sides of the pad, we could have ground some of the material off to make the pad slightly smaller, but first look at cleaning up the old carrier and these clips here. So we gave the carrier a clean. So winding back the caliper, we needed to get a little bit of penetrating fluid behind this dust cover, as on the VWs the pistons need to be wound back, not just pressed down. Now I didn't actually manage to wind back the piston initially, but I tried the pads to make sure that they now fit snug but could move easily enough, and I reassembled the caliper. Everything seemed alright at first, but after putting the wheel back on, pressing the brake pedal, and of course applying the handbrake a few times, the wheel was still binding considerably, so I had to try again. This meant I needed to make a more concerted effort with winding back the piston, so I took the disc out and managed to, using 2 screwdrivers on the end of the wind back tool, apply enough pressure to wind it back. I then pushed the piston back out, but be careful because the piston can pop out if you push it too far, and I wound it back again, lubricating as much as possible. And this was finally enough to get it through the MOT bind free. So fortunately I didn't have to replace the caliper. I was able to present the car again and the car passed. So here we have now a running car with 12 months MOT for £80 plus £60 for the starter motor, exchange unit, £10 for the sleeve on the exhaust, and £50 for the MOT. So for me, this was a £200 car. I've got some videos out of it and probably sell it on for maybe just above 300. So it's been worth it all round. I did actually put a couple of wiper blades on the front as well. Forgot about that. And also cleaned out the washer fluid which had been sat, and obviously that absolutely stank. So this is the second car I've had to do this to recently. Now the fluid doesn't actually look that bad, but it absolutely stank. So drained it out and replaced it with fresh. So the only other fault on the car, obviously it doesn't affect the MOT, is this window won't go up unassisted. So it requires, I think it's probably come off one of the cassettes. I think they've got like pinch. They've got two clamps that pinch, and I think one of them's probably gone a bit skewy. So that's the only thing that'll need sorting by the next owner. They'll be able to give the bodywork a tidy up, and it'll be a nice car for someone for hopefully a couple of years now. So what can I tell you about driving a 20-year-old 170,000 mile Golf? Well, thanks to the 60% ratio tyres, it's like driving a cloud, and it goes well. The clutch feels alright. The interior still smells a little bit from all the mould that was sat in here. I give it a quick clean, but could still do, it's being sorted out. I mean, I actually had a MK4 1.6 Golf 2000 reg as well, X-reg, for my second car at 17, but mine had an R32 body kit and a Miltech exhaust and double din stereo, all those sort of things. But I'm pretty sure that the next owner will enjoy giving it a clean up on the outside, and hopefully the car will be on the road for a few more years to come. Certainly drives well enough and will be worth keeping for a few £100 for someone. Well, that took a while. They're only 240 quid for the year to tax, and I think you should get over 40 miles per gallon out of them, so it's not too bad, especially for a car that's only a few £100. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll take a look at my other videos. There's everything that I've done on this car will be on there, and I hope that you'll stick around to see what I do in the future, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.